All right, so last night's NBA games, man, you really couldn't ask for a better lineup. We had blowouts, we had close games that came down to the wire, some really clutch performances, ready to break it all down.
Let's do it. 5 games to go over, starting with the Oklahoma City Thunder against the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Yeah, and the Thunder, they just dominated the Timberwolves 130 to 123. Their offense was on fire. What really impressed you?
Well, what stood out to me was the way the Thunder really took advantage of the Timberwolves' weaknesses on defense. Like, they were constantly forcing mismatches, especially with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He was just incredible. 35 points, 8 assists.
Yeah, it felt like every time the Timberwolves tried to adjust, the Thunder already had a counter ready. But even in a game like that, a bit of a blowout, Karl Anthony Towns, he still put up some decent numbers for the Timberwolves, 28 points, 12 rebounds.
Towns is a beast, for sure. But, one guy alone can't carry the team every single night. If the Timberwolves want to compete against these really strong offenses, they're going to have to figure out how to improve their defense.
Yeah, it felt like they were always a step behind. Speaking of tight games, the Cavaliers just barely beat the Grizzlies, 129 to 123. Donovan Mitchell was on fire, 40 points, led the Cavs to victory. Was this like a statement game for Mitchell, do you think?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's one thing to put up a lot of points, but Mitchell's impact went beyond the numbers. He was making smart plays, he was controlling the tempo of the game, and he hit those clutch shots when it really mattered. He was a true leader out there.
Yeah, and, John Morant, on the other side, still had a solid game for the Grizzlies. 32 points, 10 assists, just not enough in the end. Is there anything you think the Grizzlies could have done differently?
Yeah, you could see Morant getting frustrated during that game. The Cavs did a really good job of not letting him drive to the basket, forcing him to take tougher shots. So if the Grizzlies want to win those close games, they need to find ways to give Morant better opportunities to score when the game's on the line.
So it really was a battle of strategy as much as it was skill. Now let's switch gears a bit. The Pelicans just shut down the Spurs, 114 to 96. Their defense was amazing.
It was like a textbook example of team defense, seamless switching, double teaming effectively. They just made it so difficult for the Spurs to do anything. Brandon Ingram stood out, not just with his points, 27 and rebound 7, but he was just so intense on defense.
Oh, he was everywhere. It felt like the Spurs just couldn't get anything going on offense. What could they have done differently, do you think, to break through that Pelicans defense?
Well, they relied a lot on isolation plays, and that just played right into the Pelicans' hands. They needed more ball movement, more off-ball screens, anything to shake up that Pelicans defense. Keldon Johnson, he did manage 22 points, but it was a struggle for him all night.
Yeah, it really shows you how important coaching and having a good game plan is in the NBA. Okay, let's talk about the Raptors versus the Suns. This one had me on the edge of my seat. The Raptors ended up winning pretty comfortably, 127 to 109, but for a while there, it felt much closer.
This was the game that I was really watching closely. The Raptors played a smart game. You could see their depths and their tactical flexibility. They were pushing the pace, finding the open man, and they were just out-hustling the Suns on both ends of the court.
Yeah, and Pascal Siakam led the way with 30 points and 10 rebounds, but it felt like everyone on the Raptors was contributing. The Suns, on the other hand, they looked a little out of sync.
Yeah, they did. I mean, Devin Booker put up 29 points, decent, but as a whole, the Suns just didn't look like they were on the same page. They weren't communicating well on defense, and that led to mismatches and easy baskets for the Raptors. And their passing game, usually so good, just wasn't there. Lots of turnovers.
It felt like the Raptors exposed some weaknesses in the Suns, which is interesting because the Suns had such high expectations coming into the season.
Right. This loss might be a wake-up call for them. They're going to have to go back and rethink some things, figure out how to tighten up their defense if they want to be considered a real contender.
Potentially a pivotal game for both teams then. Okay, last but not least, we had a real nail-biter. Detroit Pistons just edging out the Atlanta Hawks in overtime, 148 to 143.
Oh, this game had everything. Big shots, comebacks, and Cade Cunningham. Man, what a performance. 38 points, 9 assists. He was unstoppable. Especially on the stretch, those clutch plays won the game for the Pistons.
Cunningham looked like a seasoned veteran out there. What impressed you most about his game?
You know what it was? It was his composure. For a young player in such a high-pressure situation, he was so calm and collected. Didn't force any shots, made the right plays, trusted his teammates. That's what a real leader does.
And Trae Young on the other side still put up 41 points, 11 assists for the Hawks. Just wasn't enough to overcome the Pistons, though.
Young had a great game, no doubt, but the Pistons just wanted it more. Diving for loose balls, making the extra pass. They played with so much intensity that the Hawks just couldn't match it.
It reminds you that talent alone isn't always enough. You got to have that heart, that grit, that refusal to quit. And the Pistons had that in spades last night. Yeah, it's amazing how a team's energy can just completely change the momentum of a game. But speaking of momentum, let's go back to that Thunder win for a second. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was unbelievable. What was he doing that made him so tough to guard?
Oh, man. The Timberwolves, they tried everything. They had their best defender on him. They tried double teaming him and nothing worked. He was just too quick, too shifty. He was changing speeds using those screens so effectively. And he could finish at the rim with either hand.
It looked effortless, really. And it wasn't just scoring either. He was setting up his teammates for open shots too, ending up with 8 assists.
Right, exactly. He was a one-man show against that Timberwolves defense. And this isn't just a one-time thing. He's been playing at this level all season.
Wow, so we need to keep an eye on Gilgeous-Alexander. He could be a dark horse MVP candidate if he keeps this up.
Oh, he's definitely on the radar. And speaking of players exceeding expectations, how about Donovan Mitchell's performance for the Cavs?
40 points in a close game against a tough Grizzlies team? Yeah, that's a statement for sure. What is it about Mitchell that allows him to perform so well in these clutch moments?
I think it's a combination of skill and just pure confidence. He's not afraid to take that big shot, and he seems to actually thrive under pressure, and he's really good at drawing fouls, getting to the free throw line, which is so important in those close games.
Yeah, he was perfect from the free throw line last night. Hit every single one down the stretch. It's those little things that separate the good players from the great ones.
Couldn't agree more. And since we're talking about clutch performances, we can't forget about Cade Cunningham in that overtime thriller against the Hawks.
38 points, 9 assists, and the game-winning shot. What impressed you the most about Cunningham's game?
It was more than just the numbers. It was his leadership. He took control when his team needed him most, made smart plays, inspired his teammates with his effort. He didn't play like a young guy in his third year. He played like a seasoned veteran.
Yeah, you could see his confidence growing with every play. And it wasn't just on offense either. He was battling on defense, grabbing rebounds, diving for loose balls.
Yeah, he was everywhere. That kind of all-around effort, it rubs off on the rest of the team, really lifted the whole Pistons team.
It was a gutsy performance. Now, speaking of teams exceeding expectations, let's go back to the Raptors, that impressive win over the Suns.
Oh man, that game was a clinic in team basketball. The Raptors were moving the ball so well, finding the open man, playing really tough defense. They were just in sync.
Pascal Siakam was great, but it felt like everyone contributed. It was like they were playing with a real sense of purpose, like they had something to prove.
Oh, they definitely made a statement with that win. They showed the league that they're not just a good team, they're a serious contender.
Right. And for the Suns, this loss has to be a bit of a wake-up call. They came into the season with championship hopes, and then they looked shaky against the Raptors.
Yeah, for sure. They need to figure out how to communicate better on defense and stop making those costly turnovers. If they don't fix those issues, they could be in trouble when it comes to the playoffs.
Shows you that even the best teams need to keep evolving, keep adapting if they want to stay on top. Speaking of teams needing to adapt, the Spurs, they really struggled against that tough Pelicans defense.
Yeah, their offense just looked stagnant, predictable. They relied too much on individual players trying to create their own shots, and that played right into the Pelicans' hands.
It felt like they were missing that spark, that creativity. Brendan Ingram for the Pelicans, though, he was fun to watch, scoring in so many different ways, setting up his teammates, and playing lockdown defense.
Yeah, Ingram's versatility makes him a nightmare to defend. He can score from anywhere, and he's really become a leader for the Pelicans.
He's definitely one to watch. Okay, so looking back at all these games, what are your biggest takeaways?
Well, we're seeing some teams and some players really exceed expectations, while others are still trying to figure things out. The playoff races are heating up. Every game matters.
And it's only going to get more intense as we get closer to the All-Star break. But even with all the excitement and the drama, it's important to remember why we love this game in the first place.
Absolutely. It's about the incredible athleticism, the skill, the unpredictable storylines that unfold every single night.
The passion, the dedication, the heart these players bring to the court.
Yeah, it really is inspiring. But even with all the analysis and all the breakdowns, there's still always that element of unpredictability.
You just never know who's going to step up, what crazy plays we'll see, or how these results will impact the rest of the season.
That's what keeps it so exciting, keeps us on our toes, keeps us coming back for more.
So what's the one thing you really want our listeners to take away from this deep dive?
I want them to appreciate just how deep and how complex this game really is. It's not just about who scores the most points. You got to think about the strategies, the matchups, all those little details that can make a huge difference.
It's about the stories, the rivalries, all the drama that happens both on and off the court.
Exactly. And I hope our listeners feel inspired to keep following the NBA season, to dig a little deeper into the stats, the narratives, and come to their own conclusions about the players and the teams.
Because ultimately, it's their passion for the game that matters most.
Absolutely. And who knows, maybe they'll even discover a new favorite player or a new team along the way.
That's the best part. So keep watching, keep learning, and keep diving deep into this amazing world of basketball.
Until next time.